Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again, back with more relationship stories. In this video, my ridiculous in-laws told guests at my wedding that I will be a great servant. And I honestly could not be more upset. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. And the title story starts like this. Have you ever dodged a bullet so massive that when you look back on your life you cannot help but wonder how you never managed to see all the red flags in the first place? Well, I certainly have, and I tell you, those red flags can certainly sneak up on you. So my SO at the time was a nice enough guy. He had that shy nervousness about him that I thought was pretty cute. Love is blind, as they say, and looking back on it now with a clear head, I can see that he was just a spineless wreck of a man, if you could call him that. When you understand his parents, you will probably understand why he was so submissive. Alarm bells started to ring when we were doing the dinner rehearsal for our wedding, and I got to see his parents for the people they truly were. I rarely got to see them because they lived abroad, so I couldn't see the family for who they really were. They were some sort of rich mogul types that had many fingers in quite a few pies, from oil baronies to a rather vast shipping trade. They were definitely the pinnacle of what others might describe as lofty ivory tower types, completely detached from reality as they are so stuck so far up their own asses. They were quite domineering and expected everyone to behave in the manner that they want them to. To show you an example of what I mean, getting back to the dinner rehearsal for my wedding, we had everyone seated and arranged so that my family was on one side and my SO's family on the other. My soon-to-be in-laws were instantly not happy about this. At first I thought they wanted to have some sort of co-mingled seating arrangement to symbolize the families coming together or something, but no, not even close. They were not happy that my SO was sat on my right hand. Apparently that was a sign of submissiveness or servitude or something. They were very vocal that I was the one that should be sat on my husband's right, with him supposedly being the leader of the family and me a great quiet servant. I was shocked by this analogy, but I didn't want to spoil my big day, so I brushed it off as some kind of misrepresentation from a couple people who live a completely different life to me. I told them that we couldn't rearrange the seating because it was far too late in the process, it would spoil the reception. They got huffy about it but accepted it in the end and did not kick up too much of a fuss about it after. We went through the dinner rehearsal without too much of an issue after that. The food came out, we sampled it, it all looked lovely, and my prospecting in-laws were quite hand-happy. I don't know if any of you have ever done a dinner rehearsal for a wedding before, but when it is all said and done, generally, people like to give little speeches at the end to wish the happy couple luck and wish them well. Well, there were not many people at the dinner. Generally, it's the bride, groom, mom and dads, groomsmen and bridesmaids, not too many people to witness the absolute horror that was about to unfold. My dad stood up and gave a rather touching speech about his little princess growing up too soon and wished me luck on my wedding day. My mom tried to give a speech too, but she just cried. Then it was my SO's parents' turn, and the words that spilled from their mouth would not have gone amiss in the dark ages or at a bloody slave auction. Instead of well wishes and good luck, they said something along the lines of, "We welcome OP to our family with open arms. May she be a stalwart and silent servant to our son's needs, that she keeps him well fed, well groomed and always ready in the bedroom." That last bit made me cringe so hard. The mom even went on to say that she had raised a strong and powerful king who deserves a beautiful and respectful servant. Not a queen, not a partner, a damn servant. I was furious, confused and utterly stunned. I did not know what to say, so I didn't say anything at all. The rehearsal wrapped up and everyone went away. Honestly guys, if I would have been OP in that situation, I probably would have slapped both the mother-in-law and the father-in-law all at once. Anyway, I was still dazed from the speech my soon-to-be in-laws gave, and when I asked my SO about it, he defended them. He told me that was what I was getting married into and that I should just get used to it. So many red flags were raised during that brief afternoon that I struggled to get everything in order. Doubt crept in and started to pick my life apart. From the day I met my SO to this very second, I could see all the little nuances that I had overlooked and penned up to my SO just being quirky and shy. Well, he was not quirky and shy, he was just a rich kid who wanted a servant and not a wife. The doubts got bigger as the big day loomed and I was busy getting ready in my changing room, surrounded by my bridesmaids. They were all voicing my exact thoughts, reaffirming my feelings that this was not the wedding I thought it was. I remember walking down that aisle, anxiety, confusion and doubt making a rather bubbly mix in my tummy, making me want to hurl all over the place. I caught the eye of my almost in-laws, and they did not look at me like a daughter-in-law. They looked at me like a farmer eyes a cow at a market. And that's when things became clear and I knew what I had to do. The ceremony went off without any issues right up until the official asked me if I take that man to be my lawfully wedded husband. Absolutely effing not, I shouted at the top of my lungs. I will not be someone else's property. I threw off my veil, chucked the bouquet away and stormed out of the church. I did not make it too far when the almost in-laws got in my way. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" the mother demanded. "You are ruining everything." I told her very politely what I thought of her, and her rather detached family could stick it, and she slapped me across the face. That is when things really get kicked off. I don't know what happened as I left, locked myself away in the changing room and shut the world out as I pretty much tore myself out of my wedding dress. Later I saw the CCTV footage. After the mother slapped me, my dad came in and he took a punch from my ex-SO's father, and things just devolved into a mess of limbs as people tried to break up the fighting. I could hear the shouting and noise from the changing room, but I didn't care. I didn't surface again until the police knocked on my door and I didn't have a choice. They had arrived about an hour into the riot, which was still in full swing when they arrived. "Excuse me, Miss OP, we need to ask you some questions about what just happened." So I told them. Purely because it was just someone to vent to, I ended up telling them everything about all they had said at the rehearsal and everything that led up to the inter-family war. I could see on the officer's face that he was not interested in the family drama and only wanted to know how the incident actually kicked off. When I finally got to the point where the mother slapped me, he jotted down a load of notes. I thought I was gonna be in trouble. "Would you like to press charges?" the officer said when he finished jotting down notes. I was stunned. I thought I was the one in trouble. "I can do that?" I asked. "Well, yes, of course, you were assaulted." So I enthusiastically went ahead with pressing charges and contacting local media. We honestly were from different worlds and I doubted I would ever step foot in the same country again, but it was the symbolism of it to embarrass them like they had embarrassed me. In the end, they were charged and fined a hefty fee for damages and got in a lot more trouble. I never saw them again after that court hearing, of which I'm utterly thankful for. A bullet thoroughly dodged. And the next one is a Karen manager malicious compliance story. But before we proceed, I would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to not miss any of my daily uploads. This story takes place about 2 months before I quit my job at the grocery store and started my first year of college. This story has a bit of exposition, so please bear with me. I was glad when I got to put my Karen manager in her place. Things had slowly started to cool down and for the next few months it was business as usual. The old store manager had to open another store, so they brought in a new one. This one was very professional and quite kind. So this store manager always recognized various employees in different departments for their hard work. This recognition of us lower employees made our Karen manager less than happy. I had started to notice a lot more people being hired and everyone's hours suffered because of it. I found out later they did this because part-time employees could be paid less and they wanted to cut costs. Well, that's the life of a retail worker. I wanted to keep making money in preparation for college, so I went into Karen manager's office and said, "Hey Karen manager, I noticed my hours were being cut and I wanted to see if I could pick up some extra shifts." She scoffed at me and said, "It's a department-wide decision. If you want hours, go to another department. I would not waste your time though." I looked at her confused and asked, "Why not?" "Karen manager, they only have hardworking employees in their departments. You would not fit in." I was dumbfounded. I thought Karen's BS bully routine was over, but boy was I wrong. I stood there unsure what to say. Meanwhile, Karen manager had another umbrage smile plastered on her face. I just turned around and walked out of her office. I didn't know if Karen manager had already lied to the other managers or not, but I might as well ask. I first went to the meat department and explained my situation. I told the manager that our department hours were being cut and asked if I could do anything to help them out. The meat manager smiled warmly and said, "Meat manager, I understand how frustrating low hours can be. We have a guy on vacation for a few weeks and we have had to stay late to wash all the pans and plates for our meat. It's simple washing and drying. You get to wear headphones within reason and you would make what a starting meat associate would. Want the job?" I was beaming and immediately took the offer. The job was simple as he promised and I took it seriously. I wanted to show other managers that I was a hard worker and reliable. 3 weeks passed by with no issue. Inevitably their missing associate came back and I had to be let go from that position. Luckily, I had spoken to the grocery manager the day before and our conversation was somewhat similar. I explained my situation and she understood. She said, "Grocery manager, you just need to tidy up the shelves, put our product on aisle-labeled carts and help unload trucks when they come in. Your pay will be a starting grocery associate pay." For context, both types of associate pay were an increase from my normal department. I took the offer and immediately helped the grocery department. Everything was fine until grocery hired a full-time employee and I had to go back to my normal department. I expected business as usual, but I got one hell of a surprise. The first day back, Karen manager yanked me in her office. The conversation went like this. Karen manager, "What the hell do you think you're doing, OP? I told you our department's hours were cut." Me, "I know, you said I could try working with other departments though. You also said some other nasty things, but I don't care to repeat those." She glared at me and said, "Karen manager, OP, you're making our department look bad. We're trying to cut costs and you're burning through hours we don't have." I decided to correct this smug Karen and said, "Me, I understand you want to cut costs and you only have so many hours. I did not take up any extra hours from our department. I took your rude suggestion and worked for other departments that were short-staffed and had an abundance of hours. I did nothing wrong." She growled at me and said, "Karen manager, listen OP, it's not fair to the others in our department if you get full-time and other employees don't." I held my ground and said, "Me, this system of hiring tons of part-timers is stupid and it's hurting quality full-time employees who need the hours. If you insist on hiring all these people, there's nothing stopping them from doing exactly what I did. There are plenty of departments that could use help." I was fed up with Karen's attitude and spoke my mind. "Karen manager, if you think my management practice is so ridiculous, you can just leave." I was tired of her BS and just smiled. Me, "Okay, I will." I turned in my effects and clocked out. I said bye to my friends and drove home. The next day, I was enjoying sleeping in for once when I got a phone call. It was the new store manager. I answered, "Me, hello store manager, how are you this morning?" "Store manager, sorry to bother you OP, but could you come back to the store? I looked over the firing of you yesterday and Karen manager was totally out of line. I talked to other managers and you have worked for and they all had glowing reviews of your work. We are pretty short-staffed to be honest and we need you back." Me, I smiled. It was always nice to be needed after all. "Well, if you transfer me to grocery effective immediately, with the pay bump to boot of course. Then I will help your department when needed, but I want grocery manager as my new boss." Store manager, done. I just pulled up your file and transferred you over. You have my word. Grocery manager is your new boss and Karen manager has no authority over you anymore. I will be having a long talk with her over her managerial practices, believe me. I smirked and said, "I will see you in 10 minutes. I drove to the store and walked in. I picked up my effects from the store manager and shook his hand. I saw the shocked form of Karen manager and snickered. I turned to a nearby customer with a smile. These last few weeks were gonna be the best. And the next one is a petty revenge story. And by the way, if you've ever gotten petty revenge or any sort of malicious compliance at your workplace, I would love to hear about your story in the comments. Back in the far-off days of 2002, which by the way does not feel that long ago if you ask me, I lived in a duplex. The people in the other half of the duplex complained to the landlord all the time for nothing, as in I was once woken up at 2 AM by my landlord calling to say that the neighbors reported me having a crazy loud party and keeping them awake. Well, I was the one sleeping, I was alone, there were no lights on, there was nothing making noise. Well, I do snore. Basically, she complained about both petty and made-up things constantly. There's your background. So then, on the property was a shed with a landlord-supplied electric lawn mower. I mowed my half one day and thought, what the hell, let's do their half too. However, the cord did not reach to their whole yard from my outlet, so I plugged into their outlet for the last 10% of their side of the lawn. Next day, she threw a fit at me that I used her electricity, a long fit, a loud fit, and I pretty much shook my head, threw my hands up and walked away from it. I used pennies of your electricity to mow your lawn. I don't even expect gratitude, it's a small unasked favor, but why bite my head off over it? Next time, she's got someone on her side installing those clear boxes over her two outlets with padlocks on them. Clearly a normal response. Petty revenge begins here. I take a gander when she's not home. Those locks are clearly the cheapest locks they could find at Walmart. I go to Walmart and buy two identical ones. They were like $6. And by the way, one of my hobbies is lockpicking. I'm absolutely not a master, I'm probably not even good, but I sure as heck can open the cheapest padlocks ever made in seconds. So then I replaced the locks with my own. It looks exactly the same. Took a few weeks, but looking out my window one day to see her with an overgrown lawn and hearing her futilely slamming a hammer against the clear boxes for half an hour made all the frustration worthwhile. So Karen, next time shut up and take the favor. To really understand this story, I need to quickly explain the layout of my property. I have a waterfront property, and in the backyard I get an amazing view of a river that runs past me, and then beyond that is woods and mountains. It's honestly beautiful, and for someone who likes nature but wants to live indoors, it is a dream come true. Next to me though is a neighbor that has a little less space in his backyard but can still enjoy the nice view. To see it though, he would need to face a little towards my property. So while I can look straight out, he needs to look at like a 45-degree angle in order to get the view. This is due to a natural hill that acts almost like a wall for the back of his property. He moved in a while back and has always seemed a bit strange to me. Nothing crazy, just things like repainting his house 3 different times in a single year to different colors and building a shed only to tear it down and rebuild it 5 feet away. Also trying to tell the neighbors what they can and cannot do despite being new while the rest of us lived here a long time already. Things started to come to a boil when he decided that my backyard was going to be his backyard. I'm usually an easygoing person and I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. When I saw him sometimes on my property at night or even very early, I just assumed he wanted to get a really good view of the sunset or moon and moved over without thinking. That does not bother me too much because I know that it must suck to have half a view when everyone else gets a really nice one. The people that used to live there had my permission to walk over the property line when they wanted to get a nice view. There is not a fence or anything, so it can be tricky to know right where my property ends and that one starts. Then he started leaving things out on my property like tools and a pile of wood. I was mainly worried that it would escalate more or that he may not have even realized that he was moving in on my property. The next time I saw him, I tried to be friendly and tell him the mistake. Me? Hey, I just wanted to let you know that this stuff is actually on my side of the property line. I would just really appreciate it if you could keep your things on your side. Neighbor, look, I don't know if you think you can just pull the wool over my eyes, but this right here is my property. Heck, even where you are standing is mine, and if I want to leave things there, I will. This guy clearly was not listening to anything I was saying. For the record, I was standing even further into my property when he said that, meaning he really thinks he owns my backyard. I tried again to tell him that I knew where the property line was and he just shut me down again. The next day he showed me clearly fake paperwork stating that about half of my yard was on his side of the line. It looked like a world map where the lines seemed to be made at completely random places for states and countries. I was not going to argue with him and instead I paid to get an actual surveyor out to look at the land and mark where the line was. Neighbor was not happy when the official work showed that his things were on my side of the property line. He told me that he needed the space more than I did and he was going to make sure that he got what was his. At this point I was fed up with the neighbor and decided that if he did not want to play nice, I was not going to either. I mentioned before that I did not have any kind of fence between the two properties. That was mainly so the past neighbors could move over and get a good view when they wanted it. It also was the only way for them to get a good view while staying on their property. With this new guy, forget it, I was going to get a fence and it was going to be one of the tallest ones allowed by the town in order to block his view as much as possible. He was warned by the builders who were following the property line that he had to get his stuff out of the way because it was going to end up on my property. He then finally moved the stuff and the fence was done being built. Personally, I found it kind of ugly and I am still thinking of ways to cover it up with bushes or maybe even ivy. The point is that his view is now totally ruined because of the fence and that natural hill blocking him. I wanted to go one step further just to show him how bad of an idea messing with me really is. Watchtowers are common around here between people wanting to get a view and people trying to get a look into the woods for wild animals. It is not the cheapest thing and something I wanted, but put off getting for a long time. This was the perfect opportunity to get it, and when I put it on my property, I was extra careful of where it went. To do one worse to this jerk, I not only took away his view, but now most of his property was in the shade of my watchtower. He moved here and wanted the amazing view and was left with nothing. He did not take this sitting down and instead started to trespass on my land, and I even noticed markings on my watchtower like someone tried to take a saw to it before realizing how strong it was. I had enough and finally took the neighbor to court for all of his crap. I showed them everything I had, from the fake surveyor report he gave me to pictures of my watchtower base being destroyed, even pictures of his stuff on my property before the fence went up blocking it. They could not charge him for trespassing because I had no evidence, but I was able to get a restraining order against the neighbor. This way, if he did ever try to sneak onto my property again and I got a picture of it, he would be in big trouble. Instead of just being fined for trespassing, he could be fined or even arrested for going against a restraining order. I don't want to call the police on him, I just want him to get the message to stop trying to mess with me. I think it did the trick because I have yet to see him on the new cameras I installed. As for me, I am enjoying my life more than ever before, and the view is the most amazing thing from the watchtower. Something about looking at water moving and seeing the mountains in the distance can bring me a smile even on the worst days. I just try not to face the other way, where I know the neighbor will be glaring through his windows because he no longer gets this amazing view. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.